Well, take all you got to give, but ain't it worth a try?
I'm thinking if we were a rare bird or a rare fish, and we had the water taken away from us, what would government do? But we're only human beings who are wanting to farm on a family farm, passing it to our children that have and generations passed it on to us, but we're not rare birds and we're not rare fish. So it's like they ignore the point that the water affects us, good clean water, the air around us affects us, and our roads to sell our products, our wheat, will affect us. And there are so many cutbacks all over the United States, and it amazes me that they don't pay that much attention to the family farm and the children, the generations to come. I'm Rochelle Herron, and I married a third-generation farmer, Scott Herron. We live on a dryland wheat farm. We've got 3 children, 2 that we believe will probably carry on the farming tradition in the family. And Scott and I have been out here at this particular piece of land for 30-some years, and plan to be here until we go. Like most farmers are pretty die-hard farmers who want to stay on the land, preserve the land, live on the land for as long as they can to help our children carry the future of the farm. As for a woman that lives on a farm, and a lot of our daily tasks are preparing meals, keeping up the surrounding, the yards. We don't have very many trees. The trees that we do plant, which the majority of them are planted, we plant them to, shade our homes. And so that requires some water, though we're very conservative on the trees because of the water situation. Also, in our homes, we're conservative with the children, from bathing to our cooking to playing in the yard under a sprinkler. It amazes me how growing up, my children have been raised to only take a small shower or not so much in the tub. And if they run the hose for the trampoline, it's always on the grass. So we try to be pretty conservative that way. In fact, last year at Thanksgiving time, our well was down and we ended up having a full meal with no water except for a couple of milk jugs full of water. So that was kind of a interesting task, but it was done because we're used to being conservative. What I've noticed for myself and for my family is you think about all these years of being conservative with water, and you're worried about your water. And when you drive by, you see all these cattle that are being sprayed. It's not drinking water. They're spraying it over the top of the cows. Like my child would be out playing in a sprinkler, and he's only allowed to be under that or be playing in that sprinkler for a short period of time. They go through thousands of gallons spraying all these cows. So it's just hard for me anymore to say, turn the water off. I kind of think to myself, what's the point? But even to this day, we are still conservative and will be still conservative with our water. One of the kind of an interesting issue that I did some research on my own was, and I think Scott had talked about it earlier, was restrictions on the road. And as of now, you know, a lot of the young kids coming up are not driving age yet, but they are coming up to being, you know, driving age. And I've heard a lot of different community members mention, you know, the trucks are on our side of the road, they need to slow down. And I constantly think once these kids are up and driving to town for jobs or whatever, that they're going to be experienced enough to come around corners and meet a truck and be able to get on their own side of the road. Another issue is the road construction, or the road restrictions. Is I went to Blanton Road and they had the signs up, roads restricted. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting because I heard they had pulled that requirement. And I drove up to the Colotus Highway on that same day, and there was road restrictions on the Colotus Highway, which is a major highway, or, you know, highway. And then I went back to Blanton, and they had pulled those road restrictions. Literally, the signs were out of the ground. So it was like, how did that happen so quickly? And the only thing that's changed out here is the feedlot. So there's been multiple things that have changed because of the feedlot, and it's very obvious that it was the feedlot. I worry about the kids, you mean as far as driving and stuff like that? Oh yeah, I worry about them driving. I'd worry about the neighbor lady. She's an adult, and she's complained to me several times about how I said, call the authorities. That's my bottom line. Call the authorities. It's all you can do, because we have no other recourse but to call and say, you know, you need to be monitoring these truck drivers. You need to be monitoring the roads. But I don't know if it's going to do any good, because it sounds like to me that the powers that be are letting them get away with a lot of things that they shouldn't be getting away with. I mean, I don't understand why Colotus Highway's got restrictions and Blanton doesn't. You know, doesn't make sense. Most of that has been kept pretty under wraps, I guess you would say, though the people that have been farming the land are wonderful people and are affected by it, extremely affected by it. It's no different than the Easter Day feedlot. How they got it into production was a lot of deception, small articles in the paper, nobody even knew about it was coming. Same sort of situation going on down here. 1 minute it's not sold, the next minute it is sold. Just a little bit of deception going on there. There's a lot more to come, I have a feeling, in our area, which makes some of us fairly nervous because of our water again. We hear that more cattle are coming in and they'll be considered range fed, which is, for the consumer, is really important. But is that range fed for life, or is that range fed until they can transport them to the feedlot and then be finished at the feedlot? So, I mean, these are just things that we potentially may see in the future. There's been contracts bought out so that they could raise 600 head on X amount of land. I'm not that familiar how many cattle should be raised on 1 acre, but that'll be interesting to see in the future, how many cows they allow to be raised on a piece of land, how they're going to water them with a well that only pumps 13 gallons a minute. We see that potentially they're going to be digging deep. And there again, we as so-called small farmers are going to have to spend lots of money to monitor our wells, and who's going to believe us? You know, that's why I'm glad to see that we're documenting some of this information, because there's more to come. We're willing to let it be known that, you know, we are going to stand strong. And that's one of my thoughts, too, on a lot of the local farmers here. They're banking on the fact that there is lots and lots of water underneath us. And I hope they stand strong and do what's best for their families, because Easter days and some of these other large corporations, they don't have our families in their thoughts. As we see it now, as things are kind of playing out, we're extremely concerned about this area becoming a industrial conglomerate of feedlots and cattle ranches, and there's just not the water to support. And those that say, you know, there's plenty of water under you, and you know, because they're in different aquifers and this type of thing, really, there's only one person that knows the amount of water that's under us, and our job as a steward of the land is to be conservative with that water, our land, and our air. And we pray that we have our water for our future generations. And we see it all over the country where people stand up and say, we don't want these types of operations in our backyard. And they're put in anyway, and they lose their water, they lose their clean air, and they lose their lifestyles. Back in the early 80s, I had been on the farm for a period of time, and there was an article in the Field and Stream magazine, and I happened to be reading it, and it mentioned the Calotes Lake, and it was filled with big bass, I guess. And so I was kind of surprised, because I thought, here's quite a large magazine that had an article about this little lake, and had somebody stop by, and they were heading that way, wanted to know how to get there. So Calotes Lake was quite a nice sized lake. I don't know how deep it was, but fairly wide, and it had been there for a lot of years. And at this point, there is no Calotes Lake. It's actually farmed right now, and that's because it's all dried up. There's been irrigation around the perimeter, outside areas of it, and has sucked the lake completely dry. So even the fish aren't safe anymore, I guess you could say, because the lake isn't there anymore, and people are going to have to go elsewhere for the big bass. The water is completely gone after they drilled, and also not only was the lake dried up, there were some wells in the area that were also dried up. So some of them had to dig new wells and dig deeper, cost more money, and there's just, you know, they have to go elsewhere for their water. And I don't know how many circles are in that area now, but that's what's going to happen. That's what happens when too much water is sucked out of the ground. And unfortunately, that water, you know, is good water. And so when they're drinking water at this point is horrid. So I don't know, they must drink bottled water now. If our well quits pumping water and doesn't allow us to have fresh water on the farm, we would then be hauling water. And we would have to find somewhere to get this fresh water for our family, and it could potentially be many miles away. I feel like we would still exist out here, mainly because this is our life. Our life has been here for many years. Our children plan to stay here on the farm, and we'll do what we can to, sustain that. One of the problems is, at that point, is what is it going to cost us for the water too? Because you're going to be pulling from maybe somebody else's well, or you're going to be transporting water for 20 miles one way. And so the cost of that too is going to be a concern. And we would not have any more grass. We'd have very few trees, and we'd get along, but it wouldn't be comfortable. I just hope it doesn't happen. I hope we have plenty of water to satisfy the needs of the farmers that have lived here and have existed here for many years, and not the new corporations that are feeding animals that really can be fed somewhere else. I've tried to raise our children with respect for one another, for other people. And when you are told that you're insignificant because you didn't want a big conglomerate or corporate business coming into your area and being untruthful about many different things, it's kind of hard to take, because you care about your neighbors and you want your neighbors to be okay, and you know that they've just been lied to in many different areas. One of the sad things about this whole deal is these large corporations, they don't care how many hours you put in on working the land. They don't care how much water you save. They don't care how you've raised your children to be respectful of the land, the water, the air. They don't care. And if you think they do, you're mistaken. Those big corporations don't care. It's all about money and greed. We're willing to let it be known that, we are going to stand strong. And that's one of my thoughts, too, on a lot of the local farmers here. They're banking on the fact that there is lots and lots of water underneath us. And I hope they stand strong and do what's best for their families, because as we see it now, as things are kind of playing out, we're extremely concerned about this area becoming a industrial conglomerate of feedlots and cattle ranches, and there's just not the water to support. And those that say, there's plenty of water under you, and because they're in different aquifers and this type of thing, really, there's only one person that knows the amount of water that's under us, and our job as a steward of the land is to be conservative with that water, our land, and our air. And we pray that we have our water for our future generations. And we see it all over the country where people stand up and say, we don't want these types of operations in our backyard. And they're put in anyway, and they lose their water, they lose their clean air, and they lose their lifestyles.
Well, take all you got to give, but ain't it worth the try?